He launched a kick to showcase his strength, but it ended up revealing the opposite. He didn't even flinch. That's what people kept saying over and over, like they were struggling to believe what they had just witnessed. One moment, it was just another routine ceremonial display outside St. James's Palace. Tourists clicking photos, school children gesturing excitedly at the guards in their scarlet uniforms, and a circle of martial artists trying their best not to show nerves. The next moment, a foot tore through the air, a crack, a stagger, and then that strange kind of silence that sounds louder than shouting. Brandon Mercer was the one who threw the kick. To the untrained eye, he appeared poised, a crisp white gi, close-cropped hair, eyes that rarely blinked. But anyone who truly understood him would have seen the weight behind his stance, the stiffness in his jaw, the pressure pressing down on his shoulders. He wasn't there for peace or cultural exchange. He came seeking victory, even if he couldn't articulate exactly what kind. The man who received the blow was Lieutenant Jabari Okoro, a ceremonial guard whose posture barely shifted, his gaze fixed forward, his expression unreadable. When Brandon's foot made contact with Jabari's cheek, the air around them seemed to shift. It wasn't a scuffle, not even a proper bout. It was intended to be a dignified demonstration. Disciplined, respectful, symbolic. Instead, it felt as though something sacred had been fractured. Jabari recoiled, not from pain, but from disbelief. He hadn't anticipated it, not due to inability, but because no one expects an attack during a ceremonial exchange meant to honor tradition. Brandon didn't celebrate, not immediately. He just stood there, waiting for cheers that never came. Someone behind the barricade dropped their phone. An elderly woman gasped. Several guards instinctively stepped forward, only to be halted by a commanding officer's outstretched hand. Jabari's gloved hand touched his cheek briefly. Then he adjusted his spine, straightened his cap, and stepped off the platform, wordless, motionless. That silence echoed louder than any violent strike ever could. Within 20 minutes, Jabari was escorted indoors. Brandon was informed that the demonstration was officially concluded. There were no trophies, no media interviews, just murmurs, suspicious glances, and the glare of camera flashes bouncing off polished stone like daggers. The footage exploded online before Brandon even made it back to his hotel. No audio, just the slow-motion sequence of the kick, the slight recoil, and the way Jabari absorbed it like it was nothing, yet still managed to seem wounded by something deeper. People spun their own narratives. He lost control. It was staged. Who the hell tries a spinning kick during a peace ceremony? Maybe he was trying to make a point. Maybe he just lost his grip. Brandon didn't say anything, not yet, because the truth was, that kick had never truly been about Jabari. It was about Brandon, about the burden he carried long before stepping onto that mat, and everything that happened after. That was about the kind of man Jabari truly was, though Brandon wouldn't understand that until much later, when the audience had gone and the lights had moved on to someone else. Brandon hadn't grown up angry. He had grown up invisible. In Toledo, Ohio, his father ran a tire shop, the kind of place where you wipe oil on your jeans and keep the radio blaring so you don't hear your own thoughts. His mother worked night shifts in elder care. They were honest, decent people. Exhausted, yes, but decent. Still, Brandon had always been the type of child no one noticed unless he caused trouble. So he caused trouble. Martial arts gave him discipline. Not peace, never peace. Just a set of rules he could cling to. And it gave him moments, fleeting but real, when people clapped for him. That meant everything. By 20, his shelves sagged under the weight of plastic trophies and regional medals gathering dust. At 26, he opened a modest dojo wedged between a vape store and a tax agency. By 30, only a handful of loyal students remained, children too young to question authority and men chasing the embers of their own past glory. Brandon still moved fast, still hit hard, but he wasn't being tested anymore. He wasn't being seen. Late at night, he fell into rabbit holes, videos from Seoul, military training clips from Tel Aviv, and ceremonial martial arts rituals from distant lands. Then he stumbled upon a short film of the Royal Guards. Their movements were practiced, elegant, and unwavering. Not just choreography, but presence, as though standing still required more power than throwing 100 punches. That's when he saw Jabari, not sparring, just standing, but something in the way Jabari held himself, calm, solid, quietly certain, made Brandon's chest tighten. It wasn't arrogance, it was assurance, and it enraged Brandon, though he couldn't say why. When he learned that the Royal Guard would be participating in a public martial arts showcase in London, he burned every favor he had. Reggie, a buddy from an MMA gym in Boston, called in a connection. Within days, Brandon's name was added to the roster. He booked a flight that same night. At the hotel, he stood in front of the mirror, rehearsing bows, adjusting his stance. He told himself it was respect, but deep down he was practicing how to take the spotlight. He wanted to be unforgettable. "It's just symbolic," the coordinator had said. "No ego, no hostility, just a cultural exchange." Brandon smiled, nodded, gave the right responses. But inside, something bitter and burning was rising. He'd followed the rules for years. And for what? A strip mall dojo and a Facebook page nobody checked? That morning, facing Jabari across the mat, Brandon had already made his choice. He would not leave without making an impression. "You sure you want to go first?" Another martial artist asked him moments before the showcase. Brandon grinned. "Yeah, I'm ready." But no one, not even Brandon, truly knew what was coming, because that kick wasn't premeditated. It wasn't calculated. It came from a place deep within him, a place that hated how unaffected Jabari seemed, how composed, how steady. Brandon thought he was about to make a statement. He had no idea how loud it would echo. Meanwhile, as Brandon packed his bag and avoided his phone, someone else was being summoned to a quiet room for a conversation that would change everything. They didn't call him the anchor for nothing. Lieutenant Jabari Okoro rarely spoke. He didn't need to. When he walked, people made way. When he stood still, it felt as if the air had to work harder just to pass by him. Not out of fear, but out of presence. He was born in Cincinnati, the youngest of three. His mother worked as a librarian. His father operated buses, never missed a shift in 3 decades. Their home was loving, but no nonsense. "There's a time to speak and a time to listen," his father often said. Most people mix the two up. Jabari learned early which one suited him best. When his older brothers got loud, he went to his room, opened old martial arts manuals from the library, and practiced breathing until the noise faded. He started serious training at 14, enlisted at 18, and later he earned a spot in a prestigious US-UK Royal Guard exchange program. Only one American was selected every 5 years. He made it in 6 months. He didn't train just to fight, he trained to endure. His mentors recognized something rare. He wasn't seeking glory, he was there to serve. During drills, one sergeant had said, "You don't flinch when you're supposed to." Why? Jabari had simply answered, "Not everything deserves a reaction." By the time the demonstration came, he'd been stationed for 2 years, guarding ambassadors, enduring hours of cold rain, ignoring tourists who stuck phones inches from his face. But that morning felt different. Too many cameras, too many men with something to prove. He didn't know Brandon. He only heard someone whisper, "American? Used to be a champ. Thinks he's the main act." Jabari said nothing, adjusted his gloves, bowed deeply when he greeted Brandon. Brandon's bow was stiff, clipped, a gesture, not a greeting. Jabari noticed. Then the match began. Brandon moved too fast, recklessly fast. Jabari deflected twice, gave space. Then the kick landed. A flash of heel, a jolt to the jaw. No fall, no retaliation. But something internal cracked. Not bone, but trust. He adjusted his posture, fixed his hat, and walked off. Not in shame, in defiance. Back inside, an officer pulled him aside. No punishment. But a rule had been broken. No contact from outside participants. No exceptions. He was being relieved of ceremonial duty. Jabari didn't argue. He stood silently in a quiet side room, uniform still perfect, hat in hand, jaw aching slightly, but his dignity intact. That evening, he called his mother. "Taking some time off," he said. "Everything all right?" she asked. "Nothing serious," he replied. "Just remembered who I am." Even Jabari didn't yet know how deeply that reminder would shape what came next, how stillness would speak louder than any kick Brandon had ever thrown. Just outside the quarter, Jabari's jaw was locked tight, though the bruise had yet to blossom. His uniform remained pristine, buttons gleaming, every crease crisp. He had already been pulled aside, spoken to with that measured tone, courteous but unyielding. He was suspended from ceremonial duties, not punished, just set aside, temporarily shelved because the optics were inconvenient, because his response had not fit some arbitrary definition of appropriate, whatever that meant, because sometimes, no matter how flawlessly you carry yourself, it's your uniform that gets placed under scrutiny. Jabari didn't protest. He understood the machinery. He didn't agree with it, but he knew how it worked. A younger guard, perhaps no older than 19, sat beside him in silence for a while before finally speaking up. "Why didn't you hit him back?" Jabari didn't turn to look. He kept his gaze fixed ahead. "If I had," he said quietly, "I would have made it about me." The younger guard blinked. Wasn't it already? Only then did Jabari turn to face him. "No," he said. "That was about him. What happens next? That's mine." Across the city, Brandon sat alone in a pub, attempting to drown out the noise in his head with whiskey and bar chatter. But it clung to him like a phantom limb, unshakable. A man in a polo shirt, early 30s, square jaw, leaned on the bar and gave him a once-over. "You're that guy from the palace, right?" Brandon nodded, uncertain whether to grin or brace himself. "Look sharp," the man added, "but kinda messed up." Brandon forced a laugh. "It's martial arts, not interpretive dance." The man shrugged. "Yeah, but he didn't even swing." Then he walked off, leaving Brandon more alone than before. By morning, the messages began arriving. Nothing monumental, just a few local sponsors politely asking to pause collaborations. One of the parents at his dojo sent a text. "Is Thursday class still happening?" They didn't mention the video, but the subtext rang clear as a bell. Brandon looked in the hotel mirror. No visible wounds, no blood, but something inside felt displaced. He had thrown that kick to assert dominance, and in that sliver of time, he had succeeded. But all the world had seen was desperation, a man reaching for something hollow. Meanwhile, the man he struck, he walked away untouched in all the ways that mattered. The true wound for Brandon wasn't the backlash. It was what Jabari chose to do next, because silence wasn't all Jabari had to offer. Brandon figured the storm would pass. Give it a few days, maybe a week. The internet had a short memory after all, but this moment had legs. Clips kept circling. They weren't just analyzing the kick now. They were dissecting its meaning. Sports commentators weighed in. Retired military officers offered their takes. Even martial arts veterans began chiming in. A well-known jiu-jitsu coach in Arizona uploaded a detailed breakdown titled, "When Skill Meets Ego, Why Control Matters Most." It went viral. 200,000 views in 2 days. Brandon watched it from beginning to end, eyes unblinking. The coach didn't attack him. He didn't need to. He simply said, "Martial arts is about more than winning. It's about knowing when not to strike." The messages kept pouring in. His dojo's Instagram went from 5 comments a week to hundreds, some loyal, others brutal. One message pierced deeper than the rest. "My kid looked up to you. Now he's asking why you hit someone who wasn't even fighting back." Brandon didn't reply. He closed the app. By Thursday, the dojo was half empty. Parents claimed last-minute errands. Flu, traffic, appointments. Brandon pretended to buy it. He still showed up, still cleaned the mats, still led drills, but the air felt changed, thin, watchful, as though the walls themselves were listening. Then came the email from the cultural committee that had extended the original invitation. "We regret to inform you." No anger, no condemnation, just a cold end. Brandon stared at the message for a long time, then quietly shut the laptop. Elsewhere, Jabari's days no longer began with drill routines or precision formations. No more polished boots or solemn parades. He'd been reassigned: administrative work, low visibility, street clothes. He didn't object, didn't ask why. But he noticed the shift. Some colleagues gave him respectful nods. Others avoided eye contact. Some simply didn't know what to say. Still, he showed up, on time, every day, quietly dependable. Then one afternoon in the break room, sipping bitter black coffee, a captain joined him. "You doing all right?" the captain asked. Jabari nodded. "Didn't think you'd handle it like this." Jabari raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" No press, no statement, no pushback. Jabari shrugged. "It's not my story to scrub clean." The captain tapped his fingers thoughtfully. "Maybe not, but people are watching. You carry more weight than you realize." Jabari said nothing. That night he returned home, removed his shoes at the door, folded his blazer, and placed it gently on the sofa. Then he sat down and stared at the floor. After a moment, he picked up his phone, opened his notes app, and began to write. Not a rant, not a declaration, just quiet reflections on restraint, on what it means to carry moments that don't belong to you, but that still leave their weight in your hands. The next morning he posted it. No hashtags, no preamble, just raw thought. It spread like wildfire. Even people who hadn't seen the original video were resharing his words. A boxing coach in Philly reposted it, captioned, "Now that's a martial artist." A taekwondo instructor in Austin forwarded it to every student in her school. And Brandon? Brandon read the post 3 times. He didn't comment. He didn't press like, but he also didn't sleep that night. What happened next didn't play out on screens. It happened in a quiet corner of the city, in a gym with no fanfare, just worn mats, peeling walls, and fighters who didn't care who you were unless you earned it. Camden Martial Arts Collective. No hashtags, no filters, just sweat and form. Brandon didn't call ahead. He walked in, gym bag over his shoulder, and waited by the wall. Jabari arrived not long after, hoodie, sweatpants, duffel in hand. He spotted Brandon immediately. Their eyes locked. Brandon stood. Jabari dropped his bag and approached. No one in the gym moved. It was as if the room itself held its breath. Brandon spoke first. "I shouldn't have done it." Jabari tilted his head. "Which part?" "The kick, all of it." Jabari nodded slowly. "You did it to feel bigger." Brandon didn't argue. The truth didn't leave room for protest. "You trained your body," Jabari continued, "but not your hunger." Brandon lowered his gaze. "I didn't come to spar," he said. "I came to say it. To your face. No cameras, no clicks." Jabari paused, then said quietly, "That hit harder than the kick." He stepped aside and gestured to the mat. "You're here. Might as well move. They didn't fight. Not really. They drilled. Light movements, and breath work, measured exchanges. Brandon kept it respectful. Jabari returned every motion with calm precision. No fury, no edge. After 30 minutes, they bowed. Brandon collapsed against the wall, drenched in sweat. "You ever feel like you don't know who you are without the applause?" he asked. Jabari crouched next to him. "I used to," he said. "Then I realized applause is just noise. Purpose is quiet." Brandon let the words echo inside him. "What now?" he asked. "That," Jabari said, standing up, "depends on who you are when no one's watching." And then he left the mat. No show, no selfie, just presence. Brandon didn't make a post. He didn't spin it for content. He just returned the next day. And the one after that. Fewer students, sure. But the ones who remained, they noticed. He taught differently. Slower, more questions, less showmanship. His fire was still there, but it burned inward now. And then, 3 weeks later, a quiet return. Tourists were back at the palace. Children laughed, families posed, the centuries-old tradition marched on. At exactly 11 a.m., the rotation began. Boots struck stone in rhythm. Fresh guards emerged in precise formation. And among them, chin high, posture immaculate, stood Lieutenant Jabari Okoro. No press release, no announcement, just presence. A woman in the crowd whispered, "Isn't that the one who—" But no one finished the sentence. Jabari didn't need them to. He didn't smile, didn't smirk, just stood, silent, grounded, whole. Brandon was there too, not in front, not holding a camera, just in the back, hands in jacket pockets, watching, not with pride, not with shame, but something closer to peace. When the crowd dispersed and Jabari stepped into the guardhouse, their eyes met one last time. No nod, no wave, just understanding. And Brandon turned and walked away. Not as the man from the video, not as the fighter seeking redemption, but as someone finally learning to carry the weight of quiet.